Pilot Boys in the building. Welcome to the Pilot Boys podcast, where you'll get the real on all things sports, music, and pop culture. I am Mecca Don, here with my co-host V.
Excited for today's show.
Yeah, today is January 16th, 2020. We're already more than halfway through the month, V.
Wow, this year's flying by.
Already. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. Today we have a packed show. We will talk to Fox Sports anchor and host Mike Hill about sports journalism and social media, life with a pop culture celebrity significant other, advice for the youth, and more. We'll also catch up with celebrity media personality and LSU fan Van Lathan.
No.
Van is back. Van Lathan about the CFP, but also if hip-hop music is in, quote, a horrible place, as Tory Lanez said. We'll talk with our resident college football insider, Zach Smith, about whether or not LSU was the best team ever and if Joe Burrow just had the best individual season. Also, what to look forward to if you're a Buckeyes fan in 2020. Finally, we will talk about the Odell Beckham handing out money scandal and give our opinions on some more news and notes. Want to get to the winner of the Pilot Boys Podcast Tea contest on Patreon?
It was really hard.
Drum roll please, Patrick West. Patrick West, you are the winner of the Pilot Boys Podcast Tea. Please DM us on Twitter and give us your address so we could send that out immediately. And finally, shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Remember that our $5 and up Patreon subscribers will get our podcast on Wednesdays now, one night early.
Wow.
And these donations help keep our show going. If you want to help keep us on air, you can donate at www.patreon.com/Pilot Boys Podcast. Let's go.
Where the Pilot Boys at? Pilot Boys, we get on up. We don't fly, boys, we getting up. So high. Pilot Boys, we get on up. We don't fly, boys, we getting up.
You're listening to the Pilot Boys Podcast. Our next guest is a current sportscaster and anchor for Fox Sports 1, formerly at ESPN. He's also a producer, host, CEO, and a two-time Sports Emmy Award winner, amongst many other things. Let's welcome Mike Hill to the show. What's up, Mike?
What's up, Michael? What's up, V? What's going on, guys?
How you doing, Mike? Glad to have you on.
Hey,
Man,
Mike.
happy to be here.
Yeah, Mike, you know, when I first met you many years ago, I think it was probably like around 2004 in New York. You were at ESPN at that time, and now you're at FS1. You know, obviously, I'm not trying to create a war here, and I know you've made it a habit to not, diss the old network. But one question that I always wanted to ask you, and I'm surprised I've actually never asked you this, is, what are some of the notable differences in your mind between the networks? Or if you don't want to necessarily do that, kind of maybe give some props to FS1, things that you really appreciate about where you're working at now.
Well, first of all, I'm giving it, like you said, I give to respect to ESPN, man, because without that platform, I wouldn't be in the position I am today. I mean, it is the worldwide leader in sports. It still is, even though I'm over at FS1 and Fox, and I'm very loyal to them. I know that, Fox still has a long ways to catch up when it comes to ESPN, because ESPN's just been around for so many years. They're a standard. So I give them that props and that glory because of what they've done and what they've been able to accomplish, and they've allowed me to be able to do the things I've done.
Right.
The big difference is, man, maybe I think it's the freedom. I feel like I'm more myself over here at FS1 and Fox. And I think they really encourage that. ESPN has a way of doing things, and which is their right. Mm-hmm. They have a system. They had an engine that they want to put their type of oil into. And when I was there, I was kind of controlled a little bit more. Right. Over at Fox or FS1, I just feel like I'm a little bit more free, man. And just, the people are great. And just being out here in LA is just outstanding.
It beats Connecticut, right? It beats.
You look like you're enjoying life out there. You look like you're enjoying. And you know what? That actually brings me to a great question, because, one of the things that we actually were going to ask you, and this is actually kind of a perfect segue, is kind of that balance between being your own person and your own voice versus being someone who's employed by, a big entity like that. And whether or not you feel, like when you're tweeting, for example, I know you're on Twitter
especially with social media.
Yeah. Like how do you balance that of like, is this Mike Hill's thoughts, or do these thoughts represent Fox Sports 1 larger, and then also, Fox, for example, just being, kind of polarizing in other areas, especially particularly in news. How do you kind of balance all of those things as you're kind of navigating this social media world nowadays?
Well, obviously you got to take into account everything that you're doing. I mean, you got to take into account the fact that I'm a father, so there are certain things I can't say as a father. There are certain things I can't say as the fiance to a reality show star, and there are certain things that I'm probably going to realize that I'm working at Fox or Fox Sports 1 or what. I was at ESPN. That even though I feel like I'm very open and very vocal on social media, that I'm just going to think about it before I actually press send, so there's a thought that goes into it. I try not to emotionally tweet. I think that when you emotionally tweet or you put things on social media and your emotions are involved, then that's when you can get in trouble. But I really feel like over the last couple of years, I've been really authentic, man. And I've really been able to say myself, say the things that I really want to say. Actually, if I want to curse, I'll curse. I'll, just to get the emphasis in there. Not that I need the curse to, improve my vocabulary or whatnot. I just think sometimes I curse to actually prove a point or put a point out there or whatever. But yeah.
Mike, let me tell you something real quick on that. My mom yelled at me the other day for cursing on the podcast too much, and I said, "Look, Mom, when I do that, it's because I'm passionate about something. It's not because I'm trying to be raw or whatever. But it's funny that you said that.
A grown man getting yelled at by his mama still.
Hey, we still get. My mama yelled at me about something yesterday. Same thing. I can't even disclose what it was, but she yelled at me about. I'm like, Mom, you just don't understand. But you know what? They always gonna give you that advice, man. But
100%.
To that point, man, like I said, you always got to put a thought process, and like even with your mom, like I said, my kids are watching, and people that even fans that look at you a certain way. It's one thing I feel like I'm really complex because I can be talking about God one day and then not be using the worst curse words in the next couple of tweets. So it's a little bit complex. God ain't done with me yet, man. But at the same time, I just feel like the difference when it comes to social media and me just being able to use my voice, I am using my voice, and I'm not. I'm unapologetic right now when it comes to being me. I realized a couple of years ago that I just had gotten away from being me. I was being conditioned at the other network to be somebody else, and now I'm really feeling like I'm just Mike Hill again.
I've 100% sensed that freedom in you.
And Mike, it's interesting. We just talked about social media, but you've worked in both eras, pre and post social media. Just interested in hearing like what you see are the differences, and how that adjustment has gone for you over time.
Man, social media has changed the world. I mean, it gives everybody a voice, and that's the good thing, but it's also a terrible thing because some people don't need to have a voice. But you know what? They have an opinion. They say what's on their mind, and you know right away how somebody feels about you through social media. It also gives entertainers, athletes, people like yourself, an opportunity to basically say what's on your mind and to kind of reveal your inner thoughts. If somebody's saying something for you, somebody's coming at you, you don't have to worry about putting out a press release or something. You can just say it right there on social media. So it's changed drastically, man. I enjoy it. I think once again, it's one of the best inventions we've ever had in our timeline, our community, our life. And it's just something that I enjoy, and I think used properly can be something that continues to change the world.
And specifically for you, I know you mentioned that like at ESPN, you were very controlled, and also just within the role of being a sports anchor, right? You're asked to just report news. Social media kind of gives you an outlet to state your opinions as well that maybe you were restricted from before.
Oh man, I got in trouble so much at ESPN for my social media behavior. You just don't know, man. Seriously, I mean, you understand when I was at ESPN, I left in 2013. Social media was really starting to take off by the time I left. But I was one of the first people to jump on Twitter at ESPN. And they didn't even realize what was going on. They didn't know what was happening. I was trying to inform them, hey, this is the way of the future. We should be doing things. Even Skype was coming out, and I was saying, hey, we should be doing our interviews with Skype. So social media and technology, revolutionized a lot of things, man, and just was able to allow me to use my voice. There was one time where I was doing SportsCenter, and the president of the network was going to come and observe our show. And he came in, and I remember just walking in, and everybody from the producers to my co-anchor to the production assistants, everybody was really tight. Everybody was like cleaned up. It's like if you're like if you got a wife and your mom's coming,
Right.
and how your wife cleans up everything.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the
Right.
whole house is spick and span or something like that.
Right.
I just noticed how everything was so spick and span, and everybody was tight and they was afraid to say what was on their mind and say, well, be themselves because he was around.
Mhm.
And I put on Twitter, I said, the big boss is observing our show. My pod, which is the pod, like the pod is the people that are around you. My pod is tighter than a gnat's ass today. I said that, and it got put in Sports Business Journal as like their joke or tweet of the day or whatever, and it didn't go over well. I got suspended.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Well, you know what? So that's great. First of all, that's hilarious. That actually brings me to another question too, which is kind of piggybacking on what we're talking about. How do you feel like social media has actually impacted journalism now? Like it seems as though the way stories are even broken, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, or kind of the barriers to entry. And how do you feel like social media has kind of impacted that industry?
So much. Because of social media and technology, man, especially the newspaper industry, it's like, why wait? You don't have to. I don't I don't turn on my television first thing in the morning and go to CNN and ESPN to find out what's going on. The first thing I look at when I wake up in the morning is Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Yeah.
And I want to see what's trending, find out what's going on, because believe me, if they're talking about it on Twitter, they've been talking about it on TV.
Right.
Or TV picks it up because they found out about it on Twitter. A lot of times we find out about things on social media long before they even realize what's going on TV. A lot of the news that we get from SportsCenter, a lot of news we get from Fox Sports 1, or some of the stories we're talking about is because people are talking about it on Twitter. Or they're talking about it on Instagram, or a picture that's been up on Instagram. So it's revolutionized and it's changed the whole game, man, because everybody, once again, has a voice. And if you're not talking about it on your networks or whatever, and people are talking about it on Twitter, you're going to be left behind. One
of my reservations kind of with social media is I agree with everything you said, but it's hard to filter what's true and what's false, right? Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. I've seen situations, like I remember like a Rick Ross story, people were reporting that he was dead.
Even reputable outlets.
Yep. Right? And you find out later that it's false, and there's this need to be the first. And, in journalism, it's always like, I think they say you always have to have two sources before you report a story. It seems like those rules aren't in place anymore.
No, that journalism as we knew it back in the day is totally dead. I'm serious. Like, man, because of social media, because of the blogs, once again, there's the good and then there's the bad. Like you mentioned, there have been times where people have thrown out fake stories. And that's why you got to look at the accounts to make sure that it's not a fake account. Mm-hmm. Because it could be one letter off, and it could be something from Adam Schefter, and it could be like Schefter is, you forgot the C in Schefter's name or something like that.
Right.
And all of a sudden people go with, Cam Newton is retired or something like that.
That's why they started verifying accounts.
That's exactly why they started verifying the accounts. But at the same time, it's like, I've always been under, the thought process of, even if you see something on CNN or on Fox or whatnot, social media, like you said, you got to verify those reports and do your own research and not just listening to what other people are telling you or what you're seeing on the tweet or whatever. So I'll look at that, I'll see that, and I'll try and get other accounts of the same story to make sure it's true, because there have been plenty of times where people, like you said, put something out there, somebody's dead, and all of a sudden they make this miraculous recovery, and they weren't even in the hospital.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it can be really confusing sometimes, but once again, it's a great source to actually get that news right away. But being first doesn't necessarily mean you're always accurate, so you got to be careful. And then the blogs, man. I've just found out how bad or detrimental the blogs can be to a person's reputation, because obviously I'm a little bit more in the spotlight because of who I'm engaged to now.
Right.
Yeah.
And you see some of the stories that are out there, and it's like, it's just not true. But people read stuff like that and they automatically believe it, and then they don't see the retraction later. So it can be really hurtful to a lot of people.
100%. And that's one of the things that we were going to ask you, which actually is a good segue too, is that, obviously you're engaged to Cynthia Bailey. Congratulations on that. Let's give them a little round of applause for that.
You,
and for me, it doesn't matter. I've known you for a long time. So for me, it doesn't matter who you're engaged to. For me, it's about you being happy, right? It just so happens that she is a celebrity and pop culture personality. And, now it seems as though, maybe everyone's probably in your personal life even a little bit more. And we're not here for that. But one of the things that I was curious about is kind of the difference in coverage, because as a sportscaster, it's interesting. Unless you're like deliberately trying to brand yourself like Stephen A. Smith, so to speak, you guys are famous, but you guys don't necessarily have paparazzi following you
reporters.
around. You know what I mean? And so, not like that. But now you being engaged to Cynthia, and I think there are a couple things that have happened. One, it seems like maybe people who didn't know you before, now they know you, and you're probably like, yeah, I've been here doing this. You know what I mean? And then and then also it's probably the coverage has to be different, right? So talk a little bit about that. What is it like now, just being Mike Hill? You've always been Mike Hill, but now you're, engaged to somebody who's famous as well.
You gotta swallow your ego and your pride, man, when it comes to being somebody like me, because like you said, I've been on a major national network for the last 16 years of my life.
Right.
I've been at a network level, so I've been seen by millions of people all the time.
Yeah.
But it's nothing like this. It's
Yeah.
a totally different audience. You got to also understand that Housewife fans aren't necessarily sports fans, so they had no idea. So they're like, oh yeah, the dude on Fox Sports, and then you gotta have a thick skin, because a lot of people think that, oh, you got this status, or you're somebody because you're dating Cynthia Bailey. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I've kind of carved out a nice little career beforehand or whatever, but that's okay.
Right.
I'm really proud and really happy to be with somebody like Cynthia Bailey, and I'm happy to be her boo. Now I've gone from being that dude that's on sports, because a lot of times, even when I was on ESPN and on Fox or whatever, people have always said sports dude or ESPN. They don't know my name.
Right.
They'll say Mike, or they'll call me Mike Lees, or they'll call me Stuart Scott. They would call me so many, all the Stan Barrett. I would get that, Jay Harris all the time or whatever, but not Mike Hill. You know what I mean? Oh, you old boy. So I'd be that dude or whatever. So they recognize the face, and they recognize who I was and what I did or whatever, but they didn't necessarily know my name.
Yeah.
Now I'm just like Cynthia's boo.
Right.
Right. Even to the dudes, like I'll be out like at a restaurant or in the airport or whatever, and if it's a black woman between the ages of 25 and 54, I just automatically assume she knows me. Bro.
Right.
Yeah. It just got to that because they watched the show. I mean, over 2 million people watched last week's episode. It's the highest rated show on Bravo. Wow. So I automatically assume that they know me, and they see me and they'll smile like, oh yeah, she know I'm from Cynthia. Yeah. And if it's a dude, I'm saying, okay, well, this is one of my boys. You know what I mean? Right. I don't know how many times especially over the last couple of months since the engagement episode came out, and where dudes will walk up to me, and I'm thinking they about to come holler at me because, yeah, Sports Center, man, ESPN, Fox Sports.
Right.
They'll be like, man, you Cynthia's man. I'm like, I've even lost them. And then they'll throw the caveat out there, and be like, oh yeah, we used to watch on ESPN too, but yeah, my wife watched you on. They'll always blame their wife or their girlfriend.
Right.
It's not them watching on.
They don't watch the show. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But it's changed, man. It's been good, man. I'm happy. I'm just happy to support her and do whatever I can. And I say my social media impact is going up tremendously. Right.
So do you guys talk through it? Do you guys talk through it? I mean, I'm not trying to get into your relationship too much, but do you guys talk through this aspect of it? Because I feel like it's something that could be powerful for a relationship, right? Two, a celebrity couple and people who are known in their own right. But I feel like it could also be something that could be detrimental, like you said, if people aren't willing to swallow their pride in certain situations. If some situations you got to know whether to play the back or whether it's your time to shine. Do you guys have those conversations?
And also
That's a really good question. That's a really good question, because we do. I mean, I think in the beginning, one of the things that when we first got together is I told her, I want to build a dynasty. I want to build a legacy. I want us to, I think we're like Neil says, we're forced by ourselves, but we're great by ourselves, but we're forced when we're together.
Yeah.
And we brought it together, man, and we can just build on it or whatever. I can bring whatever I bring to the table, and she brings her popularity, her celebrity to the table. And we're creating shows and we're doing things together now. But I've also told her that, whatever I need to do to support her, to continue to encourage her and continue to lift her up in a blaze of glory, I will do. But the good thing about it is she reciprocates that.
Yeah.
Cynthia Bailey, my baby, is such a wonderful, genuine person that she supports me like nobody else, man. When it comes to my new projects on Fox Soul, when I was doing Hyperdrive on Netflix, any of my shows, even though she doesn't watch sports, she'll come to the studio and just hang out with me or whatnot. And she always promotes me, encourages me or whatnot. Yeah. And then there are gigs that when she's doing something, she'll want to include me in those gigs or whatever to get me a little bit more notoriety, a little bit more of a different type of audience, man. So I greatly appreciate it. And so whatever I can do for her, whatever we do for each other, man, it's just icing on the cake.
Right.
And how do you filter out? You mentioned the blogs earlier. I mean, people are constantly just making up whatever about you guys. How do you guys like filter that stuff? Do you pay attention to any of that stuff? Is it hard to ignore, or do you just kind of just tune it out and say that's just the circus, we're not paying attention to it?
Well, that's another good question, man. It's like luckily, I think the best thing that happened since we've been in this relationship is that I am a sportscaster, and I've been doing this for a long time.
Right.
And as sports fans, you got to have a thick skin with that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see things out there, man, it's like, especially on social media, and people are saying things about you. They talk about, the way you look. It could be your haircut. It could be your eyebrows. It could be your cuticles, man. Zoom in. Seriously, man, right. I've had somebody zoom in on my picture on Instagram and say, "Oh, he need to get his cuticles done." I'm like, "What?"
Wow,
that's crazy.
I'm serious, man. Like,
wow.
you see it, but at the same time, you laugh at it, man, because it's so ridiculous. And you see, like I said in the beginning, social media, everybody has an opinion. They're not afraid to give you that opinion, even though sometimes they don't even put the picture up and it's a private account.
Yeah.
But on top of that, man, when it comes to the blogs or whatever, we know what the truth is. There have been several things that have been put out there that tried to paint us in a negative light, or in a light that kind of made people question, some of the decisions that we made or whatever. Even taking pictures. We did a photo shoot 2 weeks ago for this wedding magazine, and everybody thought we got married already or whatever. And then people got upset. Well, why would you take wedding photos if you ain't married? Because we can, damn it. What the fuck wrong with y'all?
And what's but Mike, what's crazy about this though? And this is the thing that's like, when I try to keep things in perspective, right? When, because, I get written crazy stuff all the time on social media, not anywhere close to what you're talking about, but you realize with fanhood, right, that is kind of what drives popularity, and it drives the checks, honestly, is people caring that much about shit that doesn't matter, and, wanting to tune in to every little aspect of your life is actually kind of what drives some of the popularity. It's like in sports, right? People who are like, tattoo their teams on their body, and, people are like, oh, you're crazy, but it's like, that's kind of what drives the industry. You know what I mean? So it's almost like, you obviously have to embrace it to a certain degree. Obviously, you don't want to be disrespected, but you do have to realize that that's part of what makes you popular and makes you money.
Yeah, people are talking about you, man. Like you said, it's like I'm not one of the people that says, all publicity is good publicity. No, it ain't always good for you.
Right.
Some of the stuff I can do without, man. Just keep me anonymous. I don't want to hear all that. I'm almost 50 years old. I don't need all that. But at the same time, there is a platform that you get because people are talking about you and saying your name or whatever. And like I said, it's like when but I've also gotten to the point, man, where I'm mature enough where I realize that people that are saying negative things about you that don't know you, and I know we use the word haters, but when it comes to haters or so-called, they're never doing better than you if you ever notice.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
They would love to have the life that you have. So I won't allow them to steal my joy, man. I just want I want to live my life, be happy, know who I am. And when you're confident in who you are and you know your whole, man, you just can't let it affect you. And that's one of the things I try and tell other people when it comes to them. Just don't even respond to it, man. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I know the block button is my best friend.
Yeah. I block and mute people all the time. That's like my favorite thing to do on Twitter. Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of joy, too, I guess one last question on this, and before we move on, is the parties. What are the parties like? Are they different now? Or are you, the things that you're attending? You got to tell us about that a little bit.
No, so we get to go to, events and stuff like that. Like we went to Kentucky Derby. I had never gone to the Kentucky Derby before, man. It's like everything is laid out for you. You go somewhere, and I got to go to the Bad Boy screening. It's just me, her, and Kenya Moore in a screening at Sony Pictures. So it's like, that's a lot of access, man. Yeah. We're not really the partying type. We get invited to a lot of parties. She gets invited. I'm like the tag along, the plus one.
Right, right.
And I don't mind, like I said, I don't mind doing that, man, because I'm her man. But at the same time, it's like, we get invited, but, we're still kind of real simple type of people, man. I go to Tao, go to Katana and just chill out in the lounge, or go to Soul House and just kind of hang out or whatever.
Right.
But
Well, look,
you know,
if you don't want to go, me and V will go in your guys' your guys' place.
I'll
Just-
put a wig
gotta
on
be
and,
my
and be
guest.
Cynthia.
Yeah, be my guest, man. You
Right.
can do it, please. Just bring me back the gift bag.
Be
I'll
the
be
gift
good
bag,
with
right?
that.
So,
yeah.
so first of all, so I want to switch gears a little bit too, because I think your story is is very interesting, like how you got there. And one of the things, like like Stephen A. Smith, for example, he puts out his story of how he kind of got to where he was, and it's not all glitz and glamour, right? And I think a lot of times when you're a celebrity of any type, there's an assumption that you just kind of got lucky or whatever. But then anytime you dig deeper and hear somebody's actual story, you realize like, wow, they grinded. They did shit that other people weren't willing to do. And I know that you definitely have a very interesting story of kind of how you got there. And one of the things that's very important for us on this show is to detail those things, especially for the younger listeners and the youth, to kind of give them perspective on what it takes to get to where they ultimately want to go. So I just want to give you a chance to kind of tell your story of kind of how did you get to ESPN?
And we also want to understand your why. Why this career? Why did you choose it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I started off like it was funny because I met Emeka because he's an actor, and he, I think we was doing he did a film together.
Oh,
and, remember the little small film we did together?
Oh my God, that's so great.
Yeah.
I forgot that's how. That is how.
Yeah.
A lot of people
So
didn't even know about my short acting career. You know what I'm saying? I was like, don't forget my Denzel on.
Man,
They're gonna start digging. They're gonna start digging, Mike.
There it is. Very talented, man. He does his thing, man. So not just the rapping thing, but I've always been proud of you, bro. So I like your journey, and I've always been a fan of that, and I've always told you that. But I came from humble beginnings, whatnot. Didn't have a lot, man. My found out my stepfather was a hitman later in life, man.
Wow.
Abusive to my mom. My mom was domestic violence her basically her entire life when I was growing up or whatever. Father alcohol and best friend was killed in the drive-by shooting. So I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth at all, man. Didn't go to college. I was in the Air Force or whatever, so I don't have a college degree. So I had to grind, bro. And then the day I got out of the military is the day I got my first job in broadcasting. But what people didn't see is the 75 tapes I sent out to try and get that first job, and only got one call to come and get that job. And it happened to be the day I got out of the military, 2 hours after I got out was the day that I got that first job, man. And then it was some ups and downs. I got to a fast burn, got to New York in 4 years, man, and being written up in magazines and whatnot. And I'm thinking I'm the shit. Then ego kind of gets involved. But you know what? God has a way of humbling you, man, because he wants you to get to a certain place. And if you're going in the wrong direction, he's going to stop that direction very, very quickly and turn you back around, man. So I lost my job in New York because of 9/11. I got fired in Dallas because of some other issues that I detail in my book or whatnot. And then I got the opportunity after being out of work for a year and a half. That's what people don't see. Being out of work and grinding and having a family, barely being able to pay your bills, man, and being depressed and gaining weight and all that stuff. And I got the opportunity at ESPN in 2004, man. And, there was some ups and downs at ESPN as well. People look at that and they see he's on ESPN, he's on Fox, man. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, man. It's a job sometimes. And even though I'm happy and I'm very proud and thankful that I have that job and the opportunity to do it, man, there was a lot of things that happened that, really stresses you the hell out.
Right.
And I went through a lot of that while I was at ESPN, from, I believe, some perceived prejudice to, some of the things I brought on to myself of just not being good enough, and then being fired at ESPN. People don't want to realize that, man. It's like, they don't want to admit when they've been fired in this business. You've been there long enough, you're going to get fired.
Right.
And that happened to me. So luckily for that, after that, I was able to always kind of fail up. So even though I got fired in Dallas, I failed up after a year and a half and got the job at ESPN.
Right.
After I got fired at ESPN, I failed up and was able to move out here to LA, man, and get the more job at Fox Sports 1. So it's been some highs, some lows, man, some good times, some bad times. But at the same time, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And this journey has been incredible. And I can't wait to share all of it in my new book, Open Mic.
Well, first of all, when does that book come out?
That comes out. I'm meeting with my publicist today, but we're trying to get a March release.
Okay.
We've been trying to put it out for a long period of time, and then there are a lot of people, I got to admit, that said that I shouldn't put it out because there's a lot of controversial stuff in there. It's a lot
Oh,
of things
nah,
that
that's why you should.
We
That's why you should put it
definitely
up.
want to have you back when you release the book.
Yeah,
I appreciate it, man.
And one of the questions that V had asked earlier, to piggyback my question, I want to kind of get into that too, is your why? Because, you know, when you, like you said, it wasn't all peaches and cream for you. There are a lot of different ups and downs and a lot of downs, right? But there's something internally that kept you going, not just going in life, but going specifically in this business. And what was your why? What was it that was helping push you forward through the tough times?
God, man. I mean, he ain't done with me yet. I still got a lot of things, a lot of flaws, and I still act like, straight up Satan sometimes. But, God pushed me through, man. There's something that is innate in me, and I think it's something that's innate in you. I told you this before, that you are meant to be a certain person in this life. And then I know that I've only reached maybe 33% of my potential. I know that there's so much more that God has in store for me, and so many things and the bigger platforms that he wants me to have so that I can touch people to make a difference. And that keeps me going, man. When you know that it's in you, when you know it's going to happen, why am I going to stop when the next day could be the biggest break of my life?
Right.
Why would I do that? So I always tell people, man, no matter how many times you get knocked down, it's an old adage, get knocked down 8 times, get up 9. Yeah, that's me, man. I'm gonna get knocked down. But the thing is, it's like a chart, like the greatest stocks in the world, Apple, I don't care who it is, whatever. You can have stocks and it can hit a high, hit a low, but then it's gonna go back up. You don't ever see a stock that just continues to rise all of us. It doesn't happen.
Right.
The stock market is the
same. They're gonna be
same.
values. That's what I'm saying about the stock market.
Right.
So the greatest stocks in the world, man, it's had ups and downs, man. So I gotta look at my life almost and take stock, literally in my life, and basically treat it that way and realize that, what, I gotta stick with it because I know better days are coming. And with God in control, man, and controlling and I'm believing in him, then I know I can control and do anything I want to in my life.
Right.
I know that. I feel that. That's the confidence I have.
And that's great advice. Like I said, I think, a lot of times, like I said earlier, people see people in high positions and they don't, they just assume certain things about it. And so that's why I think it's very important for people to hear not just the grind, but also how you were feeling at times. You know what I mean? Like, what you went through, the trials and tribulations, and then also that even when you quote unquote make it, that it's not all peaches and cream, and so
no, man,
that's the thing that I think is very important about what you just said. I want to transition to one more thing before we kind of get you out of here, and get some of your top 5 lists. Something that D.L. Hewley, that's your cousin, and it's like it seems as though, first of all, D.L. Hewley is like one of the funniest comedians of all time.
He's also very outspoken and a great voice for our generation as well.
Big time, and I feel like he's a person who's also kind of, growing into his purpose as well, right? I think he realized, his platform and how big it was, and now, he's also very smart and intellectual and realizes that his voice is powerful and speaks on issues. I think, I guess my only question really with regard to that is like, kind of what was it like being DL's cousin? And also, how, do you guys, share stuff and information and kind of mentor or, help each other kind of get through this life of celebrity a little bit?
Can you drink anything when you're around him?
Can I drink anything
without spitting it out?
It's funny. Yeah. I don't think DL drinks and smokes. So can I hold it in while I don't smoke? No, let me stop. No, man. DL, that's my big cousin, big little cousin, because he's so much shorter than I am. But his knowledge, man, I'm proud of DL because, this is a guy that has a GED, man. He's one of the smartest guys I know. So anytime I'm around him, I try to soak up, information, whether it be in politics, whether it be, he always wants to talk sports with me. So I know that's going to happen. So he'll call me up and talk sports for about 45 minutes to an hour. And I'm like, I want to talk to him about politics or whatever, about what's going on in the industry and life and whatnot. But he's always been there for me, man. Anytime I get a chance to talk to him and sit down with him, man, I got a question, he's going to give me some good sage advice, man. He's been in the business for a long period of time. But yeah, he also is very funny, man. We all have flaws or whatever. And I don't talk to him as often as I want to. He hit me a couple of months ago And this was after I can't remember who died, but somebody died. He just like was kind of feeling something like, man, we need to spend more time together. And I think I've seen him once since then.
Right,
but he's so busy.
And you're so busy.
And I've been busy. Yeah, and I've been busy lately, man, but we just haven't done it. But you bringing his name up, man, just reminds me, man, that you know what? Life is short and you never know when it's going to end, man. You want to have any regrets when it comes to the people that you love and spending so much time with them or whatever. But he's just a wealth of knowledge, man. I'm very happy and I'm very proud that he's my cousin. And anytime I get a chance to talk to him or whatever about life or anything that's happening in this industry, man, it's a good thing.
Right. Well, speaking of influential people, we have something that we do on this show that we like to do with all of our guests before we let them out of here, and we like to get two different lists. And I think that when it comes to music and sports and kind of influences, I think when you hear people's influences, it can kind of help give you a little bit more insight into who the person is. So the first list that I want to ask you about is your top 5 most influential music artists of all time. People that personal list, top 5 musicians.
Oh, okay. Musicians, so it could be rappers, it could be singers.
Yeah, it could be
like that.
Anyone in music. Yep.
Influential. Well, I'm gonna start off with Jay-Z because
Okay.
Jay-Z, Jay-Z changed my life. His 444. That's one of the reasons why I'm in my relationship right now.
Wow.
It made me. I get emotional thinking about Jay-Z's 444.
Wow.
That if I listen to that album, I cry.
Wow.
It's a grown man's album.
That's big, man.
That's my life, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I heard it, I'm like, and then, because of the things I've done in my life when it comes to like being with women and stuff like that and my ex-wives or whatever, and, the things I did, and he's like, and if, like his kids will find out about stuff, man, that just made me, I get emotional thinking about it right now. So Jay-Z definitely has a huge influence on my life. Prince has an influence on my life, obviously, because of just who he is, man, just his persona, I'm very secure in who I am, but the sexiness that he brings and exudes to the table when it comes to being, ladies and stuff like that, and his music or whatever.
Right.
Mike, how can I go wrong? Michael Jackson, of course, the influence that he has in everybody's lives or whatever. Bob Marley is probably number 4 when it comes to that type of stuff. Yeah. Just who would be number 5 as far as, gosh, that's a good question. So I got Prince, Bob Marley, I got Michael Jackson, I got Jay-Z, and gosh, I don't know who my number 5 would be. As far as
you can just put
musical,
you can just put me there. It's fine.
And here's the thing, like I look at it like a joke, but I'm saying it's like you quit a law firm, bro. And I don't know, I know you probably talked about on the show, you quit to pursue your dreams.
Yeah.
That right there, and I always tell my kids, man, it's like, don't do something that we want you to do what you think society wants you to do, man. Do what your heart tells you to do.
Right.
And so anybody that can influence me in that kind of way,
Mike, you're gonna make me cry. You're gonna make me cry.
I'm sorry, man. So I would. You're definitely one of the guys that I look up to, and I'm not saying top 5 influence, but at the same time, you're influential in my life,
I appreciate
and you're
it.
a role model in my life, man. So, but number 5, Beyonce, man.
Okay. You got Jay, you got Beyonce. It only makes sense.
Beyonce, just bruh, how can you not, man? I went to a Beyonce concert. And I was surrounded by all these women, and I really felt like it was me and 10 straight dudes there.
It's mesmerizing, right?
We looked at each other, and we was like, if Beyonce tells these women to kill us, we are dead.
The Beehive is no joke, man.
Yeah, man. That's influence for your ass.
Right. For real.
Yeah.
And now in your industry, top 5 athletes that have had the most influence on you, and maybe an interesting story with the interaction with 1 or 2 of them.
Okay, I'm gonna start off with Magic, man, because there's none. I admire Magic no matter what. Like, I loved him as a player. My favorite, Laker of all time when it came to, what he did on the basketball court, how he won. But at the same time, his business acumen, man, that influence. These are the type of things that I enjoy and I like about him. Then I'm gonna go with LeBron James, basically for the same reasons. This dude is not human. He is a mutant. There's no way in the world that somebody at that age and that many years in the league can continue to be at the top of his game the way he is. So I'm definitely going to go with that.
And doing all the things he does off the court, too.
all the things he does off the court, man. And then, like I said, my interaction with, back in the day with Magic, man, being able to talk to him and whatnot, has always been incredible as well. Then I'm going to go as far as info, Derek Jeter. Like, just, I like the way he handled himself when it came to playing in the Mecca of, he was a captain of the New York Yankees,
right?
Yeah.
Won those championships or whatever. And yes, he had plenty of women where his penis could be in the Hall of Fame on its own.
I wasn't ready.
Yeah, you weren't ready. I mean, look, think about that. The women that he's been with, man.
Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story, Jeter's story, real quick. When I first got to New York, I got into this party. It was like a New York Jets party, and I had no business being there. Like I snuck in with some guy, and we ended up sneaking into this VIP section. And in this VIP section was Mike Tyson. DL was there. Actually, it's crazy. I never even told you this. I think DL Hewley was there. Mike Tyson was there. Derek Jeter was there. Mariah Carey was there. I swear to God. And this is a small section. And I'm in there with my brother. And me and my brother are like looking around like, what the fuck are we doing here? And that night, I swear to God, if social media was around then, I would have got paid because Mariah was all over Derek Jeter, and he was kind of just playing her like she was just some regular chick. I swear to God, I'll never forget it like it was yesterday. And I was just like, wow. So when you said that just reminded me of that story. That's so funny. Yeah, he definitely was the man. One other story about Jeter too is I know a lot of like models that used to go to his parties in New York, and he had the rule. He was one of the first people to have this rule. All phones had to get checked in at the door.
Yeah.
So you had to check in your phone. There were no. That's why you'll never see any pictures of Derek Jeter's parties. And this is back in the early 2000s. So that's so funny you mentioned him. Just brought all that stuff back to me.
But that's how he stayed out of trouble, man. He was smart. He was ahead of his time, man.
Yeah.
Like, think about this dude he never had a scandal.
Right.
Not one scandal, man. And once again, this man his body should be in the Smithsonian with the women that he's with.
Right.
I mean, like, how can you not admire something like that? But, like, he did it with a lot of class and grace, man.
Right.
Steph Curry, also one of my influential guys, man. Just like the way he handles himself, man. I like people and guys who use their platform for good and also great role models, man. Wonderful role models that somebody that, I would want my kids, if I had boys, to grow up to be.
Right.
The way he loves his wife and whatnot and all that type of stuff, man. I just, enjoy him. He's a nice dude, man. Really nice dude. And then another one, and I don't know if it's top 5, but I'm going to throw him out there because I don't think he gets enough credit. Jamal Crawford.
Wow. I love Jamal Crawford.
Jamal Crawford is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in sports, man. Seriously. I think he's so articulate and just so brilliant and just so, when it comes to his acumen on the basketball court and off the basketball court, man, I just enjoy what he does, man, how he stays, relevant after all these years. And he should be in the league, man. So I'm going to throw Jamal Crawford out there as well.
Yeah, it takes a certain personality to have the type of game that him and Lou Williams. Lou Williams reminds me a little bit of him. Just always confident, always smooth. And it's not surprising to me to hear that he's that way off the court as well.
And V did this on the last show, and I'm going to do it real quick before we get you out of here. I'm surprised you didn't say Muhammad Ali.
Oh my God! Oh my! Hold a brain fart.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Let's start. Number one.
Jamal's got to go, right?
Oh my God! Yeah. That is so terrible. That is so. Man. Please forgive me. Anything I've ever said on this podcast is not. You need to. Can we just erase this whole podcast?
Oh my God!
Oh my. Yes, man.
Yeah.
How can I forget Muhammad Ali, man?
Yeah.
He was the original, man. It's like what he stood for and how he did it, man. The greatest of all time in the boxing ring, man. But how he stood up for a people and fought and sacrificed and made that happen, man. You can look at Colin Kaepernick the same way as the modern day, Muhammad Ali in a sense, man. But Cap didn't have.
He didn't do what Muhammad did.
He didn't lose what Muhammad did. You know what I mean? He lost money and endorsements and stuff like that. He got the endorsements back. But as far as like Muhammad at the top of his game, man, the greatest people. I mean, he was the number 1 athlete in the world at that time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And he's like, you know what? I don't believe in this war, so I'm going to sacrifice this and change his name, man, and fought for us.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was critical at that particular time, just like it's critical right now for people to stand up for us or whatever. But back then in the 60s, you know how that was, man.
Yeah. It was a different era.
Did
Did you ever get to meet him?
Never. And that's one of the biggest regrets. Like, I think a couple of months after he died, man, I went to an auction and they were auctioning off his gloves. I didn't care how much those gloves were. I was going to get those gloves, bro. I got those gloves.
Yeah.
So I got some signed Muhammad Ali gloves, but I never got a chance to meet him. I met his daughter, Layla, but, you know, just never got a chance to meet him, man. And that's, I really hate that. So I can't wait to, I pray I live a good life so I can get to heaven. So I can meet him one day.
You know he's there.
Yeah. Well,
Mike,
thank you so much, man, for joining us on the Pilot Boys podcast. This was a great interview. Obviously I knew it was going to be great, but even better than I expected. Definitely. I guess one last thing I would just give you the opportunity to do is kind of tell us what you have coming up next, because I think your story is so interesting that people should definitely be following you.
Well, thank you, man. First of all, I had a great time, man. You're awesome. You should be doing this as well. There's so many skills that Mecca has here. I didn't realize all the skills. You can be on television, doing my job as a host. I'm doing Fox Soul, man. We just had the big launch. It's a new TV show. It's a new TV talk show that I'm doing, man. I'm really excited about. So after all these years in sports, man, I finally got a talk show where I can talk about things that are relevant to us that's happening in the Black community. So Fox Soul is a streaming platform that you can find on foxsoul.tv on the streaming platforms like the apps or whatever, on Apple Play and Fire Stick as well. Awesome. You can download the app as well. So I'm doing a show called the Mike and Donnie Show. That's I call it the 3 R's: real, relevant, and raw, because we got real people talking real talk. It's relevant because we're talking about things that are happening in society right now. And it's just raw because it's unscripted, it's uninterrupted, and it's unfiltered, and we have a good time doing that. Also got the book Open Mic coming out. Once again, I told you that's probably gonna come out sometime in March, man. And then still doing Fox Sports 1, and me and Cynthia actually got a show that we're actually got a pitch coming up later on this month. We got a production deal with STX called The Hookup, where we met on a dating show on the Steve Harvey Show. And so we put together a production deal in a show, a dating show. Nice. So it's going to be with a little bit of a twist, man. It's a different spin on the dating world. So we kind of taking elements of the dating world and actually putting it in this dating show, man. So that should be coming out. Hopefully it gets picked up and will be coming out in the fall sometime.
Well, if you need a host or some collaborators or some writers, we're over here. We're here to help.
I see you can do it all, man. I need you to do my taxes too.
No, seriously, Mike, this is awesome. Thank you very much. You guys can follow him at It's Mike Hill on Twitter, and definitely stay tuned because he has a lot of stuff coming up. Mike, we'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, man. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, V, man. Appreciate you guys, man.
All right, thanks. Love the Pilot Boys podcast? Support us on Patreon. Supporters can pledge as little as $1, and we have some cool perks on there. Check out www.patreon.com/Pilot Boys podcast. Show us some love today.
Who I do it for, that's what got me here. It's what I'm living for, but I ain't stopping here. I put my city on, so let a hater hate. It's for my people though, in the book I stay.
You're listening to the Pilot Boys podcast. A couple news and notes, man. This is a busy week in sports and pop culture.
A lot going on and off the field.
So I want to talk about this Odell Beckham situation. After the game, the national championship game, Odell Beckham, who was obviously, played at LSU, he was on the field and he took out money from his pocket and started, handing it out to some of the players. One of them was Justin Jefferson, which is a wide receiver who's headed to the NFL. But then there was another guy named John Trey Kirkland, number 13, who is not really, it doesn't seem like he's going to be a pro player. And so there's a lot of chatter about it. LSU actually commented on it. I think they said the money money was fake. Well, let's table that for a second. Let's just assume that the money was real, right? What are your thoughts? What were your thoughts on it when you saw it happen? I've kind of, had a multitude of thoughts just thinking about it since I saw it happen. And I just want to get your perspective on it when you saw it.
I mean, the way I look at it is Odell being Odell. I'm not the biggest fan of his. I just think he does stuff and he's very irresponsible because he does it to draw attention to himself, right? And he doesn't think about the consequences. I get it, you're in the moment, but the thing is, like, you're a grown man. You know what the consequences and ramifications are for these kids in this program. To pull out money, it was just, first of all, it was corny as hell too. It was like super corny. To do that is very irresponsible, especially at a time when these kids are fighting to get more respect. There's a strong population of people who do not understand the plight of a lot of these athletes, and that people aren't just handing them all money all the time. And him doing that just drives up that sentiment and that thought, which is the farthest thing from the truth. A lot of these kids are struggling. And
what do you think about the people who say, like, well, especially for Justin Jefferson, he's going pro. It doesn't matter. He's basically essentially a pro now once that game is over. So why does it even matter?
There's optics, right? It's the optics. Why? What does anyone have to gain from that other than Odell getting 50 million views on Twitter? That's all he cares about. Like, if you really care about LSU and the program, and this is the issue that he's had everywhere he's gone, is there is some respect that you have to give to people other than yourself and what you want to do and what you're excited about.
So here's how I looked at it. When I first thought, I was like, look at Odell. What are you doing? You're obviously creating potential violations, especially with John Trey Kirkland, right? Because he's I don't think he is going pro. So theoretically, he wants to remain eligible. And also the optics, right? It's kind of like, why are you bringing this type of attention to the program? First of all, puts the players in a bad situation. Who's gonna turn down that money in that scenario, right? And then also creates bad optics for your program. But then I started thinking about it, and I was like, those things still might be true, right? But I think that it was almost like a big fuck you to the NCAA, especially in the case of Justin Jefferson, who's going pro, right? Because it's kind of like, you guys have been stopping these guys. These guys just won a national championship, and they're putting on national championship tees, while Ed Orgeron and all these coaches around them are about to get tons and tons of dollars in bonuses, and these players aren't allowed to receive any of it. So fuck you, and fuck you, NCAA. These guys should be getting paid. And so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send a message to you guys, and I'm going to slap money in their hands on national television and make you guys have to deal with it. And then when I thought about it from that perspective, I was like, that's kind of, I mean, maybe it wasn't the best way to do it. Obviously, there's going to be an investigation and all that type of stuff. But I kind of respected that because, I anytime someone says fuck you to the NCAA, you know me, I'm happy about it. So.
I mean, I respect the thought, if that's the thought, right? Mm-hmm. But then you're not thinking about the consequences for Odell's a millionaire, right? And he's made it into the NFL. What if this kid gets declared ineligible as a result of this? The NCAA has been known to come down harshly. This was on national television. Like, I get all of that, but it's not the time and place. And it's also not the time, like you said, they just won a national championship, right? The kids are excited and happy. I never believe in inserting politics into a moment like that, because you are right. These kids don't get paid, and they've played all year for this moment to actually enjoy winning the national championship. That's pretty much all they get out of it, except for the guys that are going to the league, right? Yeah. So that's my only issue with it, is you took that moment and politicized it in a way that could be damaging. And you have a history of doing stuff just for attention that makes people think that this is what this is just another PR
Well, stuff. The other thing too is I think that he, will now kind of qualifies as a booster, right? And I looked up, like, on the NCAA's website, kind of what a booster is, and basically it's just a representative of the institution's athletic interests. So, anyone could kind of be, that seems like a kind of a broad definition. But one of the things that they talk about, obviously, is giving improper benefits, and one of those is giving out cash. That's something that you can't do, and how that can make an athlete ineligible, and also how you can lose kind of your privileges as a quote-unquote booster. And I think all in all, I think for Justin Jefferson, it doesn't really matter, right? It's he's going pro. He's not, if they declare him ineligible, it doesn't matter. He's going pro. So it's like, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I think it's for the other kid, and maybe, John Trey Kirkland, and I'm not sure if there's anybody else who is going to come back to LSU. And what does that mean for him? It puts him in a bad situation now that he's going to have to answer to. And LSU puts LSU in a bad situation. And honestly, as LSU as a program, you can't really now trust Odell Beckham around your program anymore.
No,
because you don't know. Even if you agree with kind of the principles that he's trying to get across, you don't know.
By continuing to embrace him, you're saying that we condone this, and
then also you don't know if what he's going to do. You know what I mean, moving forward. So anyway,
that's why it was a bad situation, because it was an unnecessary stand. I don't think that it had the impact that you said it could have by why he was doing that. Like, I don't think it brought positive attention to the issue. It brought a lot of negative attention to it.
Yeah, so we'll see what the fallout is. Like we said, LSU is saying that it was, fake money, which is a hilarious experience. I mean, like, what? Like, just say, like, oh, the kids got the money, but they gave it right back. You know what I mean? Don't say
they took it in the moment.
Right.
Like, the thing is, no one can fault the kids. What the hell are you supposed to do? Like,
and it's Odell Beckham. Again. Don't forget, these kids are, they might be stars because they won national championship, but they're still 18, 19. Odell Beckham is still kind of their hero. They want to be who he is, in 10 or 6 years from now. So anyway, let's move on from that. We'll see. We'll keep track of the fallout from that. Obviously, we're Browns fans, so the Browns did kind of what the Browns do, right? They hire Kevin Stefanski, who's the offensive coordinator from Minnesota Vikings. He's now their head coach. I like the guy. I like his press conference. I like things that he has to say. He seems like a good dude, but it just seems weird that they would hire, not weird, typical Browns, I'd rather say, that they hire him of all the potential candidates out there, a guy who just got worked in the playoffs, basically, wasn't able to do anything. And now all of a sudden he's the offensive coordinator. And then not the offensive coordinator.
He's a first-year offensive coordinator.
First-year offensive coordinator, and now he's the head coach of the Browns. And then Dustin Fox, he actually posted this on Twitter. It was from an article about the hire, and it said Stefanski presented a detailed vision of how he will approach the head coaching job. He made it clear he was willing to yield to certain DePodesta standards, such as analytics, having an analytics person with a headset and access to coaching staff on game days, in addition to certain Haslam likes, such as hours-long Monday after owner-coach meetings. When you hear that, V, what do you think?
I just think that this ownership group and DePodesta, they need to have some fucking humility at some point. Like, you guys haven't done anything right. The only thing that's right that they did was they brought a football guy in Dorsey, who helped at least the roster get better. We got Nick Chubb now and a few other pieces. But to basically hire a guy because he's willing to submit to your standards, like, who are you? Like, what have you done? Do you have Belichick type results? You guys have lost every year that you've been in ownership. And then suddenly he has to have a meeting with you. What are you going to tell a football mind, Jim, what's his name, Haslam, about football? Like, and I just think, again, owners that understand, like Robert Kraft, he puts the power in Bill Belichick's hands because he knows he's the owner,
right?
And Bill Belichick is the football guy.
Yeah,
you got a non-football guy in DePodesta, and Haslam, whose background is in business. He's been a successful businessman, dictating the terms. I heard like they're going to have like a analytics guy in the headset that they have to listen to during the game. Like, I understand you're trying to set new standards, but this is.
Well, a couple other things too. They also hired Wade Phillips as defensive coordinator.
That's a great hire.
And Andrew Berry as a general manager. The only thing about the Wade Phillips thing is that he runs a 3-4, and I'm just wondering how that's going to work. If he's going to adjust the system, or if he's going to now run a 4-3, or if they're going to run a 3-4. Myles Garrett has to play linebacker now, or like.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to see what happens in those scenarios. I think that happened in with the Texans when Wade Phillips was there too, with J.J. Watt and Clowney.
Right. Well, obviously we're Browns fans, and I think we're obviously always, no matter how mad we get, we're always obviously optimistic. I think we're. Really,
I wish for the best. I just think that you have to reinvent the wheel and not do the same things that haven't worked in the past. I hope he's a great coach and a great hire.
So once again, we will see. Go Browns. Moving on, let's talk some hip hop news. Roddy Ricch's album was the first hip hop album to debut to #1 in 15 years. That seems surprising given the amount of successful hip hop acts we've had over the years, from Kendrick to Drake to Chance.
Was it debut or comeback?
Debut. Debut.
Yeah, I don't. For some reason, I don't think that's accurate. But if that's what they say,
that was reported by XXL magazine. So maybe they're wrong. But whether they're wrong or right, obviously
It's a great
very
look.
successful
It's
album.
a great look for him, and congrats. I like that kid a lot.
Yeah, he's really talented. I like his music, and we'll see what happens. We'll talk a little bit more about him later. Another thing that happened this week that was pretty interesting in sports: WNBA players, they negotiated a new deal. They're about to get paid a ton more, 6-figure salaries, childcare benefits, and a lot more. I think that's pretty significant.
It is significant. Take care of your players, and now we just got to make the WNBA profitable.
Yeah. So we'll keep our eye on that and see how that deal ends up panning out. But I think it's significant, and for us who have nieces, and like I have nieces that play basketball. I mean, that's great that they have something like that to look up to now.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like it's actually something that you can strive for, and a lot of female basketball players end up going overseas because of the money situation.
Because of the money, right? Exactly. Wow. Okay, so this one is kind of crazy. An ex or a former Penn State player is suing the team and suing James Franklin as well as some players, claiming that the team hazed him, not just verbally, but also sexual hazing that was pretty violent, and then even using words like "I'm going to Sandusky you." I mean, these are things that are in the complaint, that are in the lawsuit. He's claiming that the abuse led him to leave the program, and actually, I think he eventually enrolled at the University of California, and basically gave up his Penn State scholarship. Now he's seeking unspecified amount of damages. I'm sure it's in the millions, and saying that it caused stress to his football career with severe physical and emotional distress. Penn State said in a statement basically that they've investigated it, and that the police investigated it and decided not to pursue criminal charges. So I don't know if that means that they're kind of denying all the wrongdoing, but what do you think about this when you hear this?
This is the last thing that Penn State could afford. They've worked really hard with Bill O'Brien and now the current coach to get away from the Sandusky situation. And if these allegations prove to be true, I mean, they deserve the death penalty. Like, you don't play around with things. I understand hazing, but you don't sexually assault people.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear stuff like this, I think first of all you have to take these situations very, very seriously at the outset, right? Because these type of allegations are very serious. The underlying kind of actions that he's referring to in the complaint are very, very serious, and the type of things that you don't want to see happen in a football program. As people who are former athletes and people who played sports growing up, you understand that certain types of hazing happen. Like
you got to toughen up the kids, but
yeah, but obviously the allegations of these ones go substantially too far. I think they said the police investigated and didn't find anything. I don't know how to think about that. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, okay, well, what do we do? I mean, the allegations are there. Some of the Penn State players came out and denied it. I guess we're just going to have to see how this thing plays out. But I think, like you said, if it turns out that they continue going forward and they continue digging and they find that these allegations are true, then Penn State should be in really, really, really big trouble. We'll keep our eye on that one. Luke Kuechly, unexpected retirement yesterday. Put out a video. I was kind of sad watching it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for him because I've seen all the concussions and we've seen that big play where he just looked completely lost. I'm glad that he made the decision that's best for his long-term health.
Yeah.
And he's an Ohio kid. I think he's from Cincinnati. So definitely has made the state proud and made his family proud with his accomplishments on the field. And sometimes you have to walk away before it ruins the rest of your life. And
that's one of the kind of the sad kind of unspoken things, in football, especially from a fan's perspective. We watch these games and we get excited and we see big hits and we jump up and we don't realize that those things take a toll on these guys' body. I mean, you start to hear about, CTE, and Luke Kuechly's had tons of concussions. You start hearing that type of stuff. And when you see a guy walk away after 8 years, a guy who's Pro Bowler, a guy who has that type of talent, it just reminds you, right, of how dangerous this game is and the type of decisions that these guys are faced with day in, day out.
There's nothing that man loves more than football.
Yeah.
And to be forced to have it taken away is very, very sad.
Yeah. So we obviously wish him the best. And we'll see how, the rest of his career plays out. Hopefully he doesn't, the effects, of CTE or any of those type of things. Hopefully he doesn't have to deal with that. But we'll see, and we'll pray for him. Marshawn Lynch, after the game, he made some comments after the game that went viral, which some people are saying may be his last kind of, speech or press conference ever, that this might be his last rodeo. And some of the comments were basically, take care of your family, take care of your body. These are the kind of messages that he wanted to give to the next generation. I thought it was pretty powerful.
I think Marshawn has a way of saying things that really can get to the core of what the issue is.
Take care of your chicken.
Take care of your chicken.
Right.
Take care of your mental.
Right.
And I think Marshawn is he's very, very underestimated in how smart he is. He's built a life for himself through beast mode that's not dependent on football. His beast mode merchandise line is a 7-figure a year business for him.
Right.
It's also taking care of his community. It's great to hear from him, and I think he very much resonates with players, and hearing it from him is different than hearing it from a lot of other people.
Yeah,
I'm glad he did it.
I think that's spot on. First of all, he has a story of someone who came from underprivileged background, worked his way up, fought through the system, obviously played well and earned his stripes on the field, but then also realized before it was too late that what tremendous marketing value that he had as a player and as a brand, and created a brand and took advantage of it. And then also lived his life a certain way. He stories of, his foundation and giving back to the community and being involved in that regard. I think, like you said, it resonates a lot with the players. He's not just someone talking about it, but someone who's actually doing it. And so I love when I see stuff like that, because I think the young guys really need to hear that and not be influenced by some of the bullshit that you see on social media nowadays. Two more things. Pop culture. Man, I started watching the show, The Messiah. I put you on. You did. You told me about it. I literally watched the first episode, probably like 8 or 9 at night, and I ended up staying up till like 3 or 4 in the morning, just binge watched the whole first season. That show is amazing. Yeah, we definitely going to have to talk about it more on another podcast, but definitely if you're a Netflix watcher, check out Messiah. It's the best new show out. Whew, that show. And last thing, Martin Luther King's birthday was yesterday. Obviously, we're going to give him a special happy birthday and shout out Martin Luther King for all he's done. And we could use a couple Martin Luther Kings in the times we're living in right now. Absolutely, and there's never a wrong time to shout him out. Anyway, you're listening to the Pilot Boys podcast. That's all we have for news and notes. You're listening to the Pilot Boys podcast. Our next guest is a huge media personality, producer, and podcast host of The Red Pill. He was an on-air personality for TMZ for many years and now has many new things in the works. Please welcome to the show, Van Lathan. Van, what's up?
What's up? How y'all doing, man?
You finished that 5-mile run?
Not yet, bro. I actually paused because I didn't want to be on the phone with you guys all blown out and stuff like that, because y'all be getting my blood pressure.
well, speaking of that, first of all, obviously you're a big LSU fan. Everybody knows that, and I definitely wanted to shout you guys out. Congratulations on a great win and a great season. How do you feel?
It's amazing. You know what the funny thing is? The funny thing is, last night was, I'm sure as super fans, you guys can understand this. Last night was more relief than it was anything else. Mm-hmm. When you build yourself up so much about the game and then everything that the team has accomplished, and now I'm obviously elated, but you also just step back for a second and look just in the totality of what this team was able to accomplish. Mm-hmm. It's insane.
In your opinion, were they the greatest? Is this the greatest team and greatest season in football, college football history? Is Joe Burrow? Did he have the greatest individual season of any other player?
See, it depends on what you mean by greatest team. If you say greatest team, it's like if you line us up on the field with anyone where we beat them, that's hard to say. You're comparing eras and stuff like that, right?
Right.
The greatest teams in terms of NFL talent. Who's going to come in and start fucking with the 2001 Canes on that? Mm-hmm. Right. But if you're telling me the greatest run, the most accomplished, when you look at just the numbers themselves, mm-hmm. If you look at the top 10 as it stands right now, LSU ran through so many of those guys. They beat the top 4 in the AP preseason poll. So I think as far as what they accomplished on the field, it's definitely the greatest season that I've seen. Right. I can't remember seeing any one team that had done more.
And for me, like I'm living in Houston for a while. I know how passionate LSU fans are, right? Like you guys are real fans. Some of you guys are a little bit go a little far, like a lot of other fan bases, but it seems like the last few years when people were talking about the SEC, all you heard about was Alabama and Georgia. Speaking to LSU fans, it's like, look, we have a history here too. We put guys in the NFL. And was this win kind of a validation for you guys to speak about, hey, we're a great program as well?
Not to me. I think for nationally, I think the thing about being in the same division with Alabama is that, when you're in that situation nationally, people can tend to, it's like, for example, Florida State and Miami. Those are 2 blue blood college football divisions right now, because programs right now, but nobody's going to talk about them because they're being absolutely dominated in every particular way that you can be dominated by Clemson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
But nobody who knows college football is going to have any questions about historically, both recent history and past history, about what Miami and Florida State have been able to accomplish. So the rise of Alabama has been tough just because they've been beating us. But as far as our national reputation, I mean, going back in the past, obviously the 90s sucked for LSU, but since 2000, this is our 3rd championship with 3 different coaches. We've been to the national championship game 4 times. We've put all types of unbelievable talent in the NFL. We've won the SEC, I think, 4 or 5 times. So, like, as a fan, if you have your head on straight, you should be aware of what it is that LSU brings to the college football landscape.
One question I have before we switch gears is just on Joe Burrow. I guess it's a 2-part question. One is, do you think he had the greatest individual season ever from a player's perspective from college football? And then the second question is, kind of talk to us about what Joe Burrow now will be in Baton Rouge or in Louisiana, in the state of Louisiana. What will his life look like down there for, as long as he lives?
Number one, I think he had, and that's, all due respect to Cam Newton, all due respect to Tim Tebow, all due respect to a lot of guys who had fantastic individual seasons. I've never seen anything like this. Mm-hmm. And that's just based on the numbers. I've never seen anything like this. Joe never had a bad game this year.
Yeah.
He never had a bad game.
And he didn't complete like 77% of his passes or something like
77% of his passes.
I mean, 60 TDs is...
Yeah. Like, the Joe games this year range from good, great, to are you fucking kidding me?
Right.
Like those are the 3. He never had any.
And it seemed like the bigger the game, the bigger he played too.
The last 4 teams that we played, which were the ACC champ, the Big 12 champ, and the SEC East champ, the last 4 that's supposed to be the toughest, we beat those guys by 20 points a game.
Yeah.
So Joe, so by far that's the best season I've ever seen. And it's difficult to put into words how easy Joe Burrow's life in Baton Rouge will be in the near future. I mean, Jerry DiNardo can still come to Baton Rouge just for being in Florida. Jerry DiNardo can still come to Baton Rouge and get love. Joe Burrow has done something that no Tiger has ever come close to doing. And it's funny because we thought that we've had this guy before, right? This singularly transcendent player that was going to open up all kinds of different things like that. It's never really the way that we run, or the way that we won.
Right.
We thought that Leonard Fournette was this guy.
Right.
We did. But for Joe now, whatever he wants to do, literally 20, 30 years from now, if Joe Burrow, after his NFL career is over, decides he wants to be governor of Louisiana, tough to beat. Seriously. Right. No jokes, all jokes aside. Yeah. Tough to beat.
I mean, the last quarterback that I've seen like that is what Vince Young did at Texas, and I've gotten a glimpse into how he's treated when he goes back to Austin.
Right.
I can only imagine what it's going to be like for Joe.
exactly the same thing. So, I couldn't be prouder of the guys, like watching all the individual storylines and everything that everyone's been through. I'm just elated that they were able to get it done, man.
Yeah, no, and congratulations to you guys. Obviously, we're Ohio State fans, and we love Joe Burrow too. So, obviously that's LSU's championship, but we definitely feel, connected to it in some way, shape, or form. But I want to switch gears and talk some hip hop, right? Because there's been a lot of kind of different artists coming out, old and new, with different statements about hip hop right now. And, obviously we're all avid hip hop fans. One of the things that Tory Lanez had said was that rap is in a horrible place. Pete Rock had also said something kind of similar to that. Part of it is because they're saying that they feel like everything that you hear now sounds the same and there's no one's creating anything new, which I don't necessarily agree with. But I did want to get your perspective on that as it pertains to hip hop and the current state of hip hop right now.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Tory and Pete are both guys who I have a lot of respect for. It's very difficult not to respect Tory Lanez. He just does and says whatever he wants to do and puts out great music. So that's sort of the epitome of what a rapper is supposed to be, I think, or what a performer or what an artist is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say the music's in a horrible place because everything sounds the same, I think it's important for people to gauge now when you say everything sounds the same, what's the source of the sound?
Mm-hmm.
You have to me, you have to kind of have to identify that because everything certainly doesn't sound the same. Now, if you're saying everything on the radio sounds the same, or everything that goes viral sounds the same, those are two different things. Everything that's been hit sounds the same. That's different. I would even argue that though. I would say that Lizzo doesn't sound like Roddy Ricch. The Baby doesn't sound like Lil Baby.
Mm-hmm.
They don't.
Right.
These people don't. Now, there's a specific repetitive, melody-heavy genre of hip-hop that people are into. But really, throughout the course of the music, even at its height, they've always been parts of hip-hop and aspects of the music, subgenres of the music that have been dominant on radio. That's nothing new. I think you have right now, because of streaming, because of the fan base of the music, ability to compartmentalize what it is they're listening to, more diversity than ever, and more acts that are able to eat being diverse than ever. So I don't agree with Tory or with P-Rock.
Well, I think part of their criticism is specifically when they say it all sounds the same. I think digging a little deeper, I think we're in an era, we've listened to it all. I like some of the new artists, and I'm definitely not, it all sucks. But one thing that's the melody part of it, and then you listen to some of the lyrics in some of these songs, and literally they aren't even saying things that are cohesive, but it sounds good. And I think that might be specifically with Pete Rock, some of his criticism is coming from.
Well, I mean, look, yeah, I can understand that, but
it's a fundamental core part of hip hop.
Yeah, but I don't. To me, the slang and all that stuff right now, what I would say is there is a tendency now with the internet to have more homogeneity in things than ever before, right? Mm-hmm. People know if you could dress or if you live and like that. But I mean, when West Coast hip hop was dominant, right? They looked and talked a lot alike. There were guys that, I mean, when G-Funk came, and G-Funk was everywhere, right? G-Funk was a very specific sounding type of music, and it had a run where that was what you heard on the radio from gangster rap. You know what I'm saying? So to me personally, I listen. Also, I think it's a little lazy sometimes. Like, does Gunna sound like Thug to me? No, they don't. They sound different. I get that the music in and of itself is melody heavy and it sounds like the same too. But those two guys, I can easily tell them apart, and I get two different flavors from what it is that they put out.
Well, let me ask this too, because one of the things that V and I were talking about is kind of who controls the music industry, so to speak. And right now there are only three major labels: Universal, Sony, and Warner. And I think V did some research and found that they kind of control 65 to 70% of the global music industry. And one of the, I guess, when you have kind of a top heavy dominant force like that, it seems as though you're going to kind of get, I don't want to say cookie cutter, but there's a formula, right? This is business at the end of the day, right? And it's the goal for a lot of these people is to make money. It's not necessarily the influence of the lyrics or the music. And when you kind of have a formula,
all of them,
when you concentrate that type of
of
control into that few of hands, you're always going to have issues, right?
Yeah, but see, the only I don't have any issue with that being with that observation. I think that's probably astute. But the issue I have with it is, in some way, acting as if there hasn't always been a tiny section of media that controlled hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when Ye came on the Breakfast Club a little while ago, he said something that people didn't really catch. It was like 5-6 years ago. He said Lucien Grange controls half of the music industry, and because Ye was doing what Ye does, which is go crazy on everything, no one paid attention to that. I didn't even know who Lucien Grange was
right
at that point. But then you look him up and you realize that's a fact.
Yep.
But the thing is, there have always been guys cast in those roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was Lucien Grange of this generation or in the old generation, whether it was Jimmy Iovine or David Geffen or what's your man at Arista, Clive Davis, whoever
Clive
it
Davis.
is.
Mm-hmm.
Clive Davis, yeah, like whoever it is. They've always been these guys. And here's the deal. Those guys are never black. Those guys are never brown.
Yep.
Those guys never would be anybody who would have a vested interest in the messaging that the music gives to the youth. What they have an interest in is whether or not they can make good and successful music. Mm-hmm. Right. So what I'm not saying that either one of those people are bad people, but I'm saying that there are people who don't care about what your kids are listening to.
Right.
And I think Lucien Grange's son is orchestrated the whole Trippie Redd 6ix9ine situation as well. I think.
He was the man behind that.
Yeah, and that's the question here for us with social media and stuff. It's like there is an outlet here now where it's like the behavior of a 6ix9ine or a Trippie Redd. There's almost no filter, and like when you're talking about young kids who are trying to get into the hip hop industry now, there's so many other things that they have to pay attention to beyond whether or not it's good music. And I think part of that, like you said, they don't have that responsibility, but should someone have a responsibility here in what's distributed? Because I just did some research on the numbers, and they say that in the 80s when hip hop first came out, about 19% had some sort of mention of drug use or drug language in it. Now they say that it's closer to 90% of all the songs that are put out have that messaging in it, and you're seeing guys like, dying from the prescription pill epidemic. Is there a responsibility here in what's distributed by anyone if it's not them?
No, it's not. I mean, like it would be the answer. The actual answer is no. It would be fantastic if there was. It would be fantastic if we had people in these positions that cared about it, that really wanted to put stuff out there that didn't reinforce some of these things. The responsibility is, to be honest with you, is on us as a culture of what we accept, because we are going to dictate what it is that they lean into. Mm-hmm. This was a thing to me that I always that I actually learned from having worked at TMZ. So TMZ exists really for no reason, right? They don't break any news.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fact.
That's the truth.
Like they don't break any news, and this is like me banging on my old shop. This is just a fact. They don't break any news that like means anything, right? Mm-hmm. They don't break any news that pushes anything forward. Every once in a while they do. Down Sterling was an important story. Ray Rice was an important story as far as changing the landscape of domestic violence in professional sports. Every once in a while they do, but most of the stories are for fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're not fun, but they're for fun. They're because people care about celebrities and they want to know what goes on after the studio session's over, after they say cut and all of that stuff. Right. Now, the situation is, you might ask someone Harvey or whomever at TMZ, whether or not they feel like they have a responsibility not to put negative stuff out there. The only question, the only thing that they're going to come back with is an unavoidable sledgehammer of an answer. They're going to go, I have a responsibility to put out stuff that people care about.
Right.
So if you click on TMZ, if you watch the show, if you engage into that, you're giving them the mandate to continue to do it. Mm-hmm. And while it would be nice if someone was altruistic, that sat at the top of something and protected you from yourself, that's just not the way the world works.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask.
Go ahead, my bad.
Yeah, no. So I want to ask a question about that too, because when V just said, he just gave the statistics on kind of like how drug messaging has seeped into hip hop. Do you feel like that's kind of a reflection of basically then of what's happening in society as a whole, and that's the reason why, and then people are responding to it, or do you feel like it's something that's actually more pervasive in the culture?
Well, if we're going to do chicken egg with the opioid epidemic, I definitely don't think that hip hop is responsible.
Right. So
I'll just put that out there. I think years and years, I think decades and decades of prescription drug abuse and sort of the overprescribing of America and doctors' relationship with pharmaceutical companies, I think we have all that to blame for what's going on in America right now as far as the opioid crisis.
Because even in Ohio, it's a huge crisis. People are dying left and right off the opioids.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't think that rap music.
My only pushback to that is this, and traditionally I agree with you, but hip hop does drive what's cool, right? And the messaging in the music has become more pervasive, and there are less filters on who gets the content now with technology, right? Like any kid who's 10 years old, like I have a 10-year-old nephew whose favorite artist is, I don't even know how to say his name, XXXTentacion. I still haven't learned how to say his name.
Call him Triple X.
Triple X Tentacion. Wow. But this is, they're being exposed to it. And like you said, it may not be the responsibility of the artist, but we do have a problem here in that things aren't filtered the same way as they were before. And you're talking about young minds who are definitely being influenced and who look to hip hop for what's cool. Hearing these messages from their favorite artists kind of normalizes it as well, right? Like specifically within the audience of people who listen to hip hop. That's my only kind of pushback to you. Obviously the epidemic is much bigger than just hip hop.
Right. So Chronic drops like 91 or 92, right? I'm probably 92.
Probably.
I was 12. I was 12. I heard the whole album multiple times. Had it. I don't think my parents knew what was on the Chronic. I think they came to find out what was on it.
Right.
I don't think, I don't know. For me personally, access to music and ease of access to these things is obviously at an all-time high, without a doubt. However, I think pervasive sort of messages and themes in music has been something that we've been talking about going on 30 or 40 years. My point about the opioid crisis or any of these things specifically is I remember being in college and guys sipping lean, right? Guys on promethazine, guys on doing that. They have been doing that for 20 years in Texas and West Louisiana and South Louisiana before it made it. Before it got to the record, before it was widespread enough to make it to the record. It had been in Houston itself for so long before 3 6 Mafia had sipping on the scissor and all of that stuff like that. But the reality behind that is that people were actually doing it. They didn't start doing it because rappers started doing it. Now, they probably started doing it more. Mm-hmm. Hip hop would spread something more than anything, but you can't blame hip hop for the opioid crisis or anything else. Future probably was really popping pills.
Well, Future came out and said he didn't even do the drugs that he talks about. Yeah. I don't know if he was just bullshit capping or what, but like that shit's whack to me too.
Well, I mean that's horrible, but to me, when I look at this, what I would say is the people that are consuming this stuff, like when you start to see, and it's not, the responsibility is everybody's to share.
Yeah.
everyone to share. Of course, there's responsibility on even an organization like I described before. But I'm telling you this, it is an undefeatable behemoth unless people's sensibilities change.
Yeah,
I agree with
that's
you.
That's fact right there. That's facts.
So that's the, and so when Juice World dies, or when Pete dies, or when or we lose Mac or any of these guys, the question isn't how long are they going to keep shoving this music down our throats. The question is how long are we going to opt into this drug culture?
So it's basically
it's not a big deal.
So it's basically just an economics thing. At the end of the day, capitalism, free market capitalism thing. It's literally dollars and cents. It's what makes money. Is really going to be what drives everything at the end of the day. And you can't really expect anyone to have any entity to have any moral obligation greater than the dollar, so long as they're not doing anything illegal. Is that kind of how you view this thing at the end of the day?
Well, I mean, but that's what it's like that with everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Hollywood tried to make great superhero movies literally 50 years.
Right.
And they got it right 2 or 3 times. Batman, the first Batman,
Mm-hmm.
the first Superman, blah, 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 blah. Blade comes along in the late 90s, and it's a hit movie based off a character that nobody else heard from. Everybody perks up. Spider-Man comes, and the MCU comes. Now, you can't have a huge, huge blockbuster film without somebody flying in the damn movie.
Right.
So they are going to copy that and continue to make those movies until the audience says we want original stories.
Yeah.
Until they say that we want that. And that's the same thing with this. Like the only difference between that and this is nobody dies because Iron Man flies.
Right.
And in this situation, these messages in this music, what I would be interested in is just talking to some of these brothers, right? And putting them in close proximity to what they're involved in. Do you know that just like your homie died from popping pills, it's like kids out here they're dead for real, dog. Like they're like it's not a joke, like they're really dead.
Right.
So but the corporations, we can't count on them to be anything other than money making machines. They exist to make money. They have that's all they do. So
yeah. No, Van, this is really good. This is a conversation obviously we're going to continue to have on this podcast because I think there's so many different ways to flesh it out. Definitely thank you for joining us today. Make sure you guys check him out, the Red Pill Podcast.
Can I ask you guys one question before you go?
Yeah.
One question before you go?
Yeah.
One quick question before you go.
Yeah.
All right.
It's just no. It's not. Nope.
Okay.
Because let me tell you what happened. I was so nervous about the game on Sunday.
Uh-huh.
Now I wouldn't walk on any line. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't lie. I was my OCD was in full effect, and I made a promise to God. I said, if we win, I'm not. I promise you, just give us the victory, and I won't be an asshole about it. Because if not, you know what I mean. If not, I've been going crazy.
Right.
Me and Mecca had a conversation about Clemson versus Ohio State and Ohio State. I have a 2-part question for you guys. Number one, do you guys expect Ohio State to be in the national championship game next year? That's the first question. Number 2 is, and I know this is tough, if LSU had played Ohio State in the national championship game, I want a final score from each of you. You don't have to pick a winner.
Wow, you're putting us on the spot. All right, V, you go first.
You don't have to pick a winner. I just want a final score.
Ohio State will be in the national championship game next year. I think what happened to them is the reason that they will be. Any doubt was eliminated after what happened to them and how the players feel about what happened to them. So that's the answer to the first part of the question. The second question, to be quite honest, I think it would have been an incredible matchup. Our DBs against your receivers, Burrow, the familiarity, our offense versus your defense. I think it would have been a close game, and honestly, it would have been a toss-up. But obviously, I'm going to pick Ohio State, right? But I think it would have been a very, very compelling game and a better game than Clemson.
Yeah, I'll say to your first question, I think Ohio State will be in the championship next year. When you just look at it's not just because I'm an Ohio State homer. It's like looking at the entire landscape. You know, who are the threats, right? Alabama lost Tua, and they're kind of, were a typical threat. Clemson, I feel like we're better than them already. So even though they have guys coming back, they have a lot of guys leaving. I feel like Ohio State is better than them. That's probably going to be the number one competition. Then you look at LSU, they're losing Joe Brady and they're losing Burrow. Not to say they won't be good, but when you just look at the landscape and then you say Justin Fields is
we'll be the number 7 or 8 team in the country next year.
Right. And so when you look at the top, it's like, okay, who's bringing guys back? Who has the pedigree, who has the, championship type of DNA and all that type of stuff. And Ohio State is one of the few teams that you could really mention up there. So that's number one. And then number two, I agree with V. I think it would have been a much better and much closer game. I honestly cannot say who would have won that game. I know you didn't ask me that. But I think the score would have been probably, 38-35 type thing. I don't think that I think, Ohio State would have been able to get a few more stops than Clemson. But I don't think anyone can stop Joe Burrow. I don't think you can stop him. It's kind of like when you were guarding Michael Jordan. If he got 27 points,
he was in the zone.
That was an amazing defensive game. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like that. That's kind of how I view LSU. So I wish to God. I feel like in certain ways, I feel like college football fans got quote unquote cheated out of the best possible national championship game, which I think would have been that. But, it doesn't matter. For LSU fan, I would be like, whatever, all power.
I mean, to me personally, I asked the question because the next year, the national championship game is going to be a better game, and it's going to be Ohio State versus Clemson, with Fields having a whole year in the offense, the whole 2 years or whatever in the offense and being totally healthy.
Yeah.
And Trevor Lawrence with the opportunity. I'm not trying to be picky.
Yeah.
I'm not. Trevor Lawrence at this point in his career is slightly overrated to me.
You're not the first person to say that.
And so I think a lot's going to be on the line for him in a legacy situation, but I expect both of those teams to get a national championship game next year. That's all I'm saying. But Trevor Lawrence is not the best quarterback we played all year.
Yeah.
He's not.
If you look if you look at the landscape of college football, I think it's hard to like Ohio State and Clemson will be 1 and 2, right? I mean, maybe I'm missing someone. Oklahoma, Oregon.
Bama will be bad. Bama will be bad. There'll be a lot of good teams, but I think just returning those guys at quarterback.
Yes,
that's the thing.
That's the key.
Like returning those guys at quarterback is like that's the thing. Like nobody else in the country is going to be able to say that they're returning their ace, their Heisman Trophy guy at the QB position. So that's a huge advantage. So I expect you guys to be back.
Right. I appreciate it. Well, look, we'll I'm sure we'll talk more about this. And actually, it's interesting.
Yeah, man.
This season never ends. There's always stuff going on in the off season, and we're going to bring you back in also on this hip hop conversation. Like I said, it's going to be an ongoing thing for us because we obviously care about it deeply and want to make sure, when people say it's in trouble, it makes me feel like I got punched in the face a little bit because I know we have, even if it's just a small part, we have something to do with it. So once again, thanks to Van Lathan for joining us on the Pilot Boys podcast. Make sure you check out his podcast, The Red Pill. It's available everywhere, and follow him on social media at Van Lathan.
Through the wars, been through it all, don't care who you are, ain't taking all ball. The book got strong, hands up high, fans don't lie, got millions more. Bring that juice, swerve that lane, we struggle now, we bring that pain. Be who you are, love who you ain't, there ain't never been a year, we ain't coming in rank. Pulling our weight, ain't making them wait for the title they desire, so we give it to them now. Fighting off hate, this is our state, rap hard for the fuckers that are making us proud. This is our show, this is our time, oh how against the world, better make up your mind. Never gonna happen while I'm rapping, if they add it as a rapper, if they think they gonna be taking our shine. It's who I do it for. That's what got me here. It's what I'm living for. But I ain't stopping here. I put my city on. So let a hater hate. It's for my people though. In the Buckeye State.
You're listening to the Pilot Boys podcast. We are here with our resident college football insider, former Ohio State wide receivers coach, and now podcast host, Zach Smith. Welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure.
Zach, what's up, man?
Nothing. Just hanging out. Season's over.
Yeah, so the season's over. And, obviously LSU beat Clemson in the national championship game. It was a pretty dominant performance. You look at the story kind of Joe Burrow, right? It's almost like one of those stories that's out of a movie, right? A kid from a small town goes to maybe his dream college. Things don't work out. He transfers and, not in a desperate kind of attempt to show his talent. Lands in the perfect situation for him, goes on and wins the Heisman Trophy, has an unbelievable season, and wins the national championship. It's a great story. And for Ohio State fans, obviously, we're proud of Joe Burrow. But one of the questions I think, more important than, them winning the game and all that type of stuff is, what does this mean historically, right? Because a lot of people are saying two things. One, that Joe Burrow just had the greatest individual season ever of any player ever in the history of college football. And then the other thing people are saying is that LSU just had the greatest season as a team in the history of college football. And I want to get your thoughts on that. One quick note, some people were talking about, in terms of who had the best season ever, I saw some people arguing about it on Twitter, and people came with the 2001 Miami team. And they're like, look, that 2001 Miami team was better. They were pretty much just as good offensively, but way better defensively. They only gave up 9.8 points a game for the season, and I think LSU gave up close to 22 points. So how do you see this historically in terms of this win for LSU?
Yeah, I think what's lost in the shuffle is how good was LSU on defense when it mattered, right? At the end of the year, their last 4 weeks, they were one of the better defensive teams in the country. Now, you can't say that for the whole year. I mean, giving up 600-plus yards to Ole Miss, and so they weren't as dominant on defense as, let's say, Miami, like you said, the 01 Miami team, or even the 02 Ohio State team, or the 08 Florida team. I mean, you could go down the list. The 15 Ohio State team, 14-15, would definitely be in the conversation as well.
Sure.
But what they had that those teams didn't have was Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
And you look back at 01 Miami, 02 Ohio State, all those teams, and no matter what, if you like JT Barrett or Cardale, none of them played like Joe Burrow did.
Right.
And so it's an argument that anyone could have, and there's no right answer, but they were ridiculous.
And I think you have particularly good insight here because, Joe came to Ohio State as a freshman, not the Joe Burrow that is today. What would you say are the biggest differences you see in his talent today from the guy that you saw in practice all the time at Ohio State?
I mean, I think it just was confidence in the system, confidence in his abilities. He obviously worked his ass off to improve as a passer, to improve offensive knowledge. But I was talking to a college football coach yesterday about it. It's like he was making throws that it was almost like, that's a covered route. That's the guy's on the tick marks, almost out of bounds. Like, it's just poor fundamental football. And this freak of nature goes up and makes the catch.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
I mean, the ball's in the air. Those kids at LSU, the receivers, were coming down with it.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Randy Moss's kid as your tight end.
Right.
You got the Bolitnikoff Award winner, Justin Jefferson. I mean, just stupid on the perimeter.
Right.
It's like, that'd be nice.
So let me ask. Let me ask this, because this is one of the kind of things that you see on social media a lot, particularly amongst Ohio State fans. Do you believe, I mean, it's hard to predict, right? But do you believe if Joe Burrow had stayed and was able to get developed under Ryan Day, that we would have seen a similar output? I believe that, but I don't know. I mean, if that's true. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was definitely the trajectory. He just wanted to play right away.
Yeah.
And so it was between him and Dwayne, and it wasn't even like Dwayne won the job. Joe got hurt, and Dwayne might have had the slight edge. There was no winner yet, and Joe was like, I don't want to risk it, and so he left.
Yeah.
And but people want to make it like people at Ohio State didn't think he would be a great player.
Right.
I mean, he got recruited as the next Alex Smith. That was the selling point to Urban. Tom Herman went down and said, listen, I'm telling you, I found Alex Smith. This kid is ridiculous.
Right.
He's going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft, underrated guy. That was the storyline coming into Ohio State.
Yeah.
And then he goes out, and he was a young kid that was developmental. He needed to develop.
Right.
And he did. And obviously you watched the end result of it when he links up with a guy as good as Joe Brady, and now here we are.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see how much that development mattered because, you brought up Dwayne Haskins. Even when we saw him get some playing time, it seemed like Joe was an overall better fit for what Ohio State was trying to do, which was run and throw the ball, because Dwayne is great at many things, but running the ball isn't one of them.
No, not at all.
So I guess, moving past that, where do you see him as a NFL quarterback now that he's gone to LSU, had what some people are saying is the greatest season? Is he the surefire number 1 pick? Do you think, from what you've seen, that quarterbacks are hard to project, but he's about as sure of a thing at the next level?
I mean, you look at the quarterback position and the intangibles that you look for, I think he is. He's certainly not going to be a precision passer that's just dicing people up by putting it on right shoulders instead of left shoulders, and he's not that. He's not a bad passer. He's not inaccurate, but he's not going to be Peyton Manning. He's not going to be Tom Brady, putting the ball exactly where Drew Brees. I think he's going to be more of a Russell Wilson, more of a almost, I don't want to say Brett Favre, but a guy that just has that fire, that passion, that competitive nature, and is going to go in there and win games.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to be the number 1 overall pick, but I don't think he's this dominant passer at that level like people might try to project him to be.
Right. Last question too. Well, I guess first of all, do you think it was the greatest individual season ever that you've seen? Or?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
When I broke it down, I rewatched half of their season and really looked hard at the analytics. And it was the first time ever in my career that I went on, even on my show, and I said, I don't know what is a good option to try to stop this kid. I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about playing zone coverage, playing man coverage. Like, the only thing I could come up with was simulating pressures, getting pressure on him somehow without blitzing, because he's better when he's blitzed.
Yeah.
I mean, he's ridiculous.
He's ridiculous.
I mean, he completed 70% of his passes when he was blitzed against Clemson, and completed 56% when he wasn't blitzed.
Wow.
So it's like, you're going to blitz him?
Yeah.
He's better.
Right.
Don't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it's like, all right, what do you do? Sit in zone coverage?
Right.
Oh God,
Yeah.
he's going to kill you.
Yeah. So I guess the last question then is, for Ohio State fans, I think one of the things that Ohio State fans want to believe is that Ohio State was the best team in the country this year. And obviously the way the Clemson game ended, we feel like we got robbed, and we feel like we wish we had that chance. How do you think Ohio State would have matched up against LSU in a national title game?
I think that you'd have had the best chance at slowing Joe Burrow down, because Ohio State had the personnel to play man against those receivers. Now, I'm not saying they would have shut them down,
right?
But they could have. Jeff Okudah could have played man on those kids, and he's going to do it in the NFL.
I mean, they did it against Clemson's
receivers. They did it against Clemson's receivers.
Yeah.
And the pass rush would have been completely different. I think that
they could have rushed 3 probably, and
right.
Maybe.
They could have rushed 4 and got home.
Yeah.
Is the moral of the story.
Right.
And then offensively, I think it would have been really a battle.
Yeah.
I think that LSU's deficiencies would have been kind of an even match for Ohio State offensively.
Right.
I think it would have been a good game.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Yeah,
you
I'm not going to sit here and say that definitively that Ohio State would have won, but I do think the only team probably that I could have given a real chance to is Ohio State, and I do think, to some degree, college football fans were cheated out of that opportunity.
Yeah.
If I'm an LSU fan, I'm like, fuck you. I don't tell me anything.
Yeah,
right?
right?
Like we won the SEC. We went undefeated.
Yeah.
It's like when we listen to Miami fans talk about 2002.
Yeah.
Like, come on, we won.
But this is even worse, because it's like LSU didn't even play. LSU just beat the team that beat Ohio State by 20. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't care what would have happened.
Yeah, right.
Be quiet.
So if you would have squeaked out a win, you would have got beat by 20
right.
points.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean?
That's what they're saying. So we'll never know. But I guess we'll get you out of here on this. Talking about now that the season is over, moving forward to 2020, Joe Brady is actually leaving LSU. Joe Burrow's leaving LSU. I don't really see them as a threat.
A couple of those receivers are leaving too.
Receivers are leaving. I don't really see that as a threat next year. As an Ohio State fan looking forward to 2020, how should you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should feel as good as you felt going into a year ever. They're loaded everywhere.
Yeah.
They really are. I mean, there'll be some question marks in the secondary. There'll be some question marks on the D-line. But fortunately, those are the 2 positions, especially when Kerry Combs finally they can announce that he's a freaking secondary coach. My God, it's like the Titans are going to.
Hey, it'll be great if he wins a Super Bowl. Right?
If they win a Super Bowl, then what if he's like, I want to do that again?
Right.
Change his mind. But those are the 2 positions that have, especially with Kerry returning, have been developed probably better than any other position. So you have to feel really good.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you got your quarterback coming back. You got your offensive line for the most part coming back. I think it's running back and secondary.
Yeah.
It's a 2-team. It looks like it's a 2-team race next year, right? Clemson, Ohio State probably are the most loaded teams.
Certainly now. Right now it is. I mean, you can never count Alabama out. You can there'll be other teams that obviously pop up, but those are going to be the 2 front runners for sure.
And one last question that I have now that you mentioned Kerry Coombs. Mike Vrabel's a guy that you worked with. What he's doing in the NFL playoffs is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys see that this was his trajectory and where he was going to head?
Yeah, I really do, because Mike Vrabel was one of those guys that was, I mean, he's really smart. And he's one of those guys that like book smarts and street smarts. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
I've always got that sense
he's
from him.
savvy as shit, tough as shit, like quick-witted.
Yeah.
Like you never wanted to talk shit to him
Right.
because he was gonna just kill you.
Yeah.
Because and so I really look at that more than anything when I think about a CEO, especially at that league.
Yeah.
Like he's a guy that can look at a guy and say, "Listen, I was a Pro Bowler. I
Yeah.
played for the Patriots.
Yeah.
I know what a culture's supposed to look like."
Right.
And he also didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
like some coach that goes to coach millionaires. He's like, "Bitch, I'm a millionaire too.
Right.
Shut the hell up.
Right.
Sit down and
Right.
here's what you need to do."
Yeah.
Right.
He's got that presence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Now I never would have saw this coming like that. I mean, he was a D-line coach, went to the NFL, all of a sudden he's getting named for head coaching positions, and I was like, holy shit.
I mean, he was playing chess with Bill Belichick and winning. Like
Yeah.
that game was amazing to watch.
And he was a football coach for like 3 years,
Right.
4
Yeah.
years.
Right. Yeah.
But he has it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's amazing to watch. Obviously, as you know, Buckeye fans, it's amazing to watch what they're doing. We're rooting for him, and obviously Kerry Coombs, and we do hope soon Kerry Coombs gets announced as defensive coordinator. Right? He's going to be not just secondaries coach.
No,
he's
he'll
gonna
be some form. You know how those
Maybe
titles work.
assistant,
Assistant, co,
assistant,
something. But
yeah.
he'll definitely have a title with it,
right.
Or else
That's
he ain't
exciting.
coming.
That's
and
exciting.
that'll be big. That'll be big for Buckeyes fans. Anyway, Zach, thank you for joining us on the Pilot Boys podcast. Obviously, always good insight. Make sure you guys check out his podcast, Menace to Sports. It's available everywhere. That's all we have for today's show. Big thanks to our guests, Mike Hill, Van Lathan, and Zach Smith. Thanks to everybody for listening. Don't forget, sharing is caring. Subscribe to the Pilot Boys podcast on Apple, Spotify, Patreon, and YouTube. And please follow us on social media at Pilot Boys Pod on Twitter and at Pilot Boys Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. And don't forget to follow the hosts on Twitter. I'm at Mechadon Music, and V is at Viswant.
And always remember, be you. You is fly.
Pilot Boys out!
Pilot Boys at? Pilot Boys, we get on up.